I have prepared this video to explain History Chapter 1 of your social science. Chapter 1 is Introducing History. In this chapter, we discuss about human past or history, what is history and why do we study history, about the sources of history and how do they help us studying the past. One question always arises: who am I and where did I come from? Our parents and grandparents help us to find answers to all these questions. But if we wanted to know who our ancestors were or how they lived in the past, we will have to study history. Humans have different past. We use the term past in plural because different groups of humans had different past life. Some were kings, administrators, military men, while others were farmers, merchants, craftspeople, artisans, hunters, and herders. Each of them followed different practices, lifestyle, custom, and rituals. They also followed different religion. Now we start our chapter to what is history. History is the study of events, people, and their way of life in the past. It tells us about past settlements, economy, and society. It also tells us about the clothes people wear, their food habits, and their occupations. The study of past also helps us to understand the beliefs and faith of the people in past. From the life of hunter-gatherer meaning one who hunted animals and gathered food. The early human beings cultivated land and then slowly moved towards a modern life. The study of history allows to understand how and why such changes have taken place over a long period of time. It tells us about how people gradually made discoveries and inventions which led to their development. History also helps us to understand our present and mold our future too. Our past is divided into long stretches of time or periods to make it easier to study. One of the most common division is into prehistory, proto history, and history. Firstly, we discuss about prehistory. Prehistory is the period for which there are no written documents and records. We rely entirely on archaeology to know about the lives and history of the people living during this period. Archaeologists explore, excavate and study to remains to understand the history of prehistoric people and civilization. Archaeology means the science of exploring and excavating old remains is called archaeology. Now, protohistory. Protohistory is the period for which we find some written documents, but they are few or yet to be disappear. For example, the history of Indus civilization falls under this period. We have not been able to decipher the script of this period yet. Next one is history. History is the period for which we have been able to decipher the written records of past events. Many of these records are found on rocks, clay, and barks of birch. They provide important information regarding this period. Next is sources of history. Next is sources of history. History is studied on the basis of records of the past events. These records are known as sources of history. The scholars who study the past using various sources are called historians. They also explore clues and materials left behind by the people in the past. The sources of a period can include fossil remains, bones, remains of settlements, monuments, utensils, and pottery, tools, and literature and written records, paintings, inscriptions, and coins. Broadly, we divided sources of history into two parts: archaeological sources and literary sources. Archaeological sources includes fossil remains, monuments, artifacts, inscriptions, and coins. Literary sources includes manuscripts, scripts, and language, ancient literature. Archaeological sources. First, we discuss about fossil remains. Fossils are remains of plants, animals, or human body parts from the past preserved in rocks. These have been burned for millions of years. The imprints of hard body parts such as bones or skulls leave a permanent mark on the rocks. Fossils are the main source of information for many species of plants and animals that have become extinct, for example, dinosaur. Monuments. Next is monuments. Monuments are ancient buildings and structures such as temples, mosques, tombs, palaces, and forts. They throw light on the social, religious, and cultural life of the people of the period in which they were built, rebuilt, or altered. They also give an insight into the architectural styles that involves during this period of construction. For example, Sachi Stoop in Madhya Pradesh. This is the picture of Sachi Stoop. Sachi Stoop in Madhya Pradesh is an important Buddhist monument. The stoop design and material tell us that it was originally built of bricks during Ashoka's time. It was expanded and rebuilt with stones during the Suna period, Sunga period. An inscription on the southern gate of the stupa informs us that the gate was added by King Satkarni of Satvana dynasty. The northern gate and the panels also depict stories for the Jataks. Next is artifacts. Artifacts includes human-made objects such as seals, toys, tools and implements. Ornaments and pottery have been found at various archaeological sites. Ornaments means jewelry. They tell us about the kind of life people lived and their occupation. The artifacts also help us to understand the social setup of that time. Next is inscription. Inscriptions are the written records on stones, pillars, clay, or copper tablets, caves, and walls of the temples and monuments. They are reliable sources of information about the history of any period. They provide us names of the kings and their administration, for example, the Ashokan inscriptions and the Allahabad pillar inscription, also known as Pragya Prasthi, gives us an insight on the region of Ashoka and Samudragupta. Next is coins. Next is coins. The study of coins is known as numismatics. Numismatics who study The coins. Since they were made of metals, they survived for many years. They were issued by kings and merchants. Most coins are stamped with dates and images. Therefore, they also provide valuable personal information about the rulers and the people who issued them. For example, Samudragupta's coin tell us that he was a good Veena player. First, we discuss about literary sources. The written records of history are known as literary sources. These records were written on animal skin, clay tablets, rocks, pillars, walls, and wood before the invention of paper. First, in literary sources, first we discuss about manuscripts. The early literary records were handwritten. They are called manuscripts. Manuscripts were written on palm leaves and later on paper. Over the years, many of these manuscripts got destroyed. Some of them are still preserved in temples, monasteries, and archives. They throw light on the social and economic life, religious beliefs, practices, and culture of a particular period. Next is scripts and languages. Many ancient societies developed their scripts. They gradually took the form of languages. The language of ancient Indian literature depends upon the region where it was written. Some of the languages include Prakrit, Pali, Sanskrit, or Tamil. For example, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana were written in Sanskrit because they were authored in the northern part of India, where Sanskrit was the main language. Ancient literature. Most ancient literature were memorized. They were passed on from one generation to the next orally. Later, these were written down on palm leaves and animal skin. For example, the Vedas and the Puranas contain details of rituals, prayers, and religious practices of the ancient past. They are classified as sacred or religious literary sources. Many historical accounts and biographies were written by poets and foreign travelers, classified as non religious or secular literature. They were written to record events, laws, and administrative regulation of the contemporary society. Next is time frame in history. Historical events are classified according to time in the form of BCE and CE. The BCE stand for Before Common Era. It refers to the period in history before the birth of Jesus Christ. It was earlier known as BC or Before Christ. CE stand for Common Era. It refers to the period in history after the birth of Jesus Christ, earlier known as AD or Anno Domini. Historians arrange the events of history in a sequence according to the time when they took place. This is called chronology. These historical events are graphically represented in a timeline. There are some questions related to your chapter. Question number 1. What is history? Second, define archaeology. Third, what is a manuscript? Fourth, what are fossils? 5. What are artifacts? 6. How do coins help us to understand history? 7. What do inscriptions tell us about history? Thank you.